In this video, I'll go through the welfare laws triangles. Sometimes you'll hear them as the deadweight welfare laws in a monopoly diagram. Long story short, these triangles actually change location depending on the business objectives. The most common thing that you will have seen is probably this orange triangle here that I've got drawn, which is the welfare laws for a profit maximizing monopoly that's charging P1 and Q1. But you'll see by the end of today that that's not necessarily going to be the case for the different business objectives. And you'll also learn how to maximize social welfare in general so that you'll be able to understand why there's a loss at a quantity that's not maximizing the welfare. This is a long conversation. I'm simplifying, I'm reducing the content a little bit today. So you might have some questions outstanding, but I hope to cover that in subsequent videos. If not, just leave a question at the end of the video and then I'll make sure to follow up on that later. Okay, so the theory of maximizing social welfare. Sorry, my audio is still not good. The theory of maximizing social welfare is you want to produce at the quantity where MSC equals MSB. The reason is because if you were producing at a particular quantity that could have more benefits than costs, well, you could make society better off because you'll be adding more benefits than costs. So in this case, if you had the benefits larger than the costs for that particular unit, your total social welfare would increase. Social welfare would increase. So that doesn't maximize welfare. It could still increase if you were in that scenario. And let's look at the opposite scenario. If your costs are greater than your benefits, in this case, well, you're adding more problems to society than benefits, your social welfare is going to start to decrease. So the theory is the best thing to do is to not go as far as actually cause a decrease in social welfare. Never produce where your costs are greater than your benefits for that unit, but also take advantage of every case where your benefits are greater than your costs. That means if you remember the shape of like a MSB curve and MSC curve, MSC goes up, MSB goes down. Basically, this is where I'm cutting things, but leave the questions in the comments. You're going to end up wanting to produce where MSB equals MSC. You will have gained all the prior units that have more benefits than costs, and you haven't gone as far as actually produce units that have greater costs than benefits. Okay, so that's the rough theory, rough, right? The problem is, how does this apply to a monopoly diagram? We don't have MSB curve, we don't have MSC curve, but we kind of do in some ways. We can make some assumptions. So the MC curve here that I have in this diagram is the firm's marginal costs. In other words, you've seen this also, you could call it a marginal private cost. Private cost. So that's that one. This is really a marginal private cost curve. You could add the P in there if you wanted, or you could not and just know it's the firm's cost. So it's like the private costs. If you remember from the externality topic, there was a curve called MSC. I know I'm throwing things around all the time, but like bear with me if you really want to understand the triangles. Like, I mean, there are different ways of doing this. There are different ways of doing this. This might be an unnecessarily complicated way. If so, switch the video. But if you have faith that it can be better, then maybe go for it. So in externality topic, you learned that your social cost is equal to your private costs plus your external costs. So if I assume that there are no external costs in this production process, then I could actually say that this is the MSC curve. And also your demand curve is the maximum that consumers are willing and able to pay. And you could think of that like the marginal private benefit, right? If I expect to receive 10 benefits from a monopoly diagram, I'm prepared to pay £10 for that. So this is my marginal private benefit curve, my demand curve. And again, based on what you learned in the externality topic, your MSB curve, the social benefits, is the sum of all the private benefits plus any external benefit. If again, we assume that there are no external benefits, there are no positive externalities here, then I can also call this, I can think of it as my MSB curve. So this helps us to understand a little bit more about the welfare. So let's go back to what we learned here in this case here. So right now, profit maximizing at Q1 and P1, right? Why do you want to produce at Q1? Because if this is my MSB curve, the benefits I have received for all the units that I've produced up until Q1, that's what Q1 means. I'm producing all of the units, including the last one, Q1. I've received all of these benefits, but the cost that society has paid is measured by this MSC curve, in which case we have scenario number 1 here, where the benefits are much greater than the costs. And it made sense for me to want to increase production in this case. I want to increase the production whenever the benefits are greater than the costs. Even though this adds like less, it still adds to total social welfare. So this is a really good outcome. I want to increase the production in this case from a social welfare perspective. Then we get to the problem of a monopoly. The monopoly is a profit maximizer and wants to stop here at Q1. But notice that there could still be benefits to society. Notice how these units continue to have the marginal social benefits higher than the marginal social costs, meaning that they could have added more to social welfare than the social costs. So I don't know how to label this. Let's put this one as Q star as like the optimal. And let's say that at Q1, the monopoly is not maximizing social welfare. Therefore, there is a welfare loss. This is because the units that they don't produce, so those are the units between Q star and Q1, these units have, or could have, let's just say could have, because it's theoretical, could have benefits greater than the costs. Therefore, they would have been good to society. They would have increased social welfare. By the area in orange. So there's a little technical bits behind that, but this is one way to think about why there's a welfare loss. And we have seen in a prior video that you can kind of speed up this process if you need to. I don't kind of like throwing it at you guys because I know that there are like questions that will remain. And this can seem quite complicated if I just summarize it. So Q star, Q1, these units have MSB greater than MSC, meaning that they could have increased social welfare by the difference between all the benefits and all the costs that they would bring for all of these units. Now, it's not exactly a triangle, so we mathematicians will like be like, this is not the area, but I'm just going to use this loosely. Okay, so how does this welfare loss concept change when you don't profit maximize and instead revenue maximize? I'm going to use a different color. Let's use pink. If I am revenue maximizing, let's say I'm going to produce at MR equal to 0, and the quantity is going to be QR, and the price is going to be PR. The social optimum is still found where your social costs, marginal social costs, and social benefits meet. That's still going to maximize social welfare. So Q star is still Q star. But now there's fewer units that we haven't produced. So we only have these units that could have added more benefits than cost. It wasn't like at profit max where there was a bigger underproduction. Now this underproduction is smaller. So these units between QR and Q1, they have benefits larger than cost by this area here, meaning that this would be the deadweight welfare loss at revenue max. So it's still not maximizing social welfare revenue max, but it's not as bad as profit max according to this theory. Okay, so that's that one. Now, sales max is a little bit different because it is all the way on the other side. Revenue max, I've run out of colors, is where your ATC equals your AR. In this case, you're making normal profits. This, I'm going to call it QS for sales. Notice that they've actually done scenario 2 here. The social optimum is still Q star because Q star still has MSC equal to MSB. But if you pay attention to just these units here between Q star and QS, notice that they have added more to costs. This was my social cost curve. These units have added all of these costs, but they have only added all of these benefits. That was my MSB curve, this demand curve. As a result, I've actually harmed social welfare because I have produced too much. So it's not like at QR and Q1 where I'm harming society because I'm not producing enough. It's like a kind of like a theoretical harm. This one is, okay, I have actually produced too much. I have added more costs than benefits. So the units overproduced between Q star and QS have costs greater than social benefits. Therefore, this creates a social welfare loss area of the red area. In this case, it looks maybe slightly smaller than the profit max, but it's a significant welfare loss. The reason is, yes, okay, your consumers are a lot better off. I guess they're paying much lower prices, they have much higher quantity, but you have extracted away all of those profits, supernormal profits that the firms had before. And remember, social welfare was about everyone, was about the firms, the consumers, and any third parties. Obviously, if a monopoly also is creating externalities, positive or negative externalities, these areas will change. I think I'm just going to leave that as like a side note, but because that's like I guess it's another video. But I hope that kind of makes sense to you because we had assumed that there were no external costs or no external benefits. If instead, for example, your social cost curve was over there, then things would change. But I think probably that's completely kind of out of scope. This video is also maybe slightly too advanced as well, but if it does help you understand that from this particular theory, then I think that's a great step forward. There are other ways to do it, so hopefully in other videos I will be able to cover that in more detail. Anyway, please like this and share this video if you found it helpful, and leave any comments. As I said, I am expecting a couple of questions and I will be happy to take a look at that. Thank you very much.